Anger has a strange reputation. We talk about it as if it is purely unpleasant, something we want to control, reduce, or get rid of. But if anger were only painful, people probably wouldn't hold on to it so tightly. Think about the last time someone disrespected you. Maybe they dismissed something you said, broke a promise, took advantage of your patience, criticized you unfairly, or treated you as though your feelings didn't matter. At first, you may have felt something softer: hurt, embarrassment, rejection, fear, powerlessness. And then anger arrived. Suddenly, something changed. Your body became energized, your thoughts became sharper, the uncertainty disappeared. Instead of wondering, was I not good enough? You thought, how dare they treat me like that? Instead of feeling small, you felt powerful. Instead of feeling confused, you felt certain. And that transformation helps explain something important. Anger can feel good because anger changes your psychological position. Imagine someone makes a joke at your expense in front of other people. For a fraction of a second, you feel exposed. Everyone heard it. Maybe they are judging you. Maybe you looked weak. That feeling is uncomfortable because embarrassment places you in a vulnerable position. But then your mind produces another interpretation. That was disrespectful. Now embarrassment becomes anger. Your posture changes. Your attention moves away from yourself and toward the person who offended you. You are no longer asking, what is wrong with me? You are asking, what is wrong with them? That shift can feel enormously relieving, because anger often protects us from emotions that are harder to tolerate. Consider rejection. Someone you care about stops responding to you. At first, your mind may ask painful questions. Why don't they want me? Did I do something wrong? Was I not important to them? Those questions expose you to uncertainty and sadness. But anger offers another story. They never deserved me. They're selfish. I can't believe I wasted my time on them. Notice what happened. The external situation didn't change, but your emotional position did. Sadness says, I lost something I wanted. Anger says, something wrong was done to me. One feels vulnerable. The other feels powerful. This doesn't mean anger is fake. Someone may genuinely have treated you badly. The point is that anger can perform an additional psychological function. It can cover emotions that make us feel helpless. Fear can become anger. Shame can become anger. Grief can become anger. Humiliation can become anger. Even uncertainty can become anger. Because anger gives the mind something vulnerability often cannot: a direction. When you are anxious, you may not know what will happen. When you are sad, you may not know how to repair what was lost. When you feel ashamed, you may want to disappear. But anger tells you exactly where to look. There is the problem. There is the person responsible. There is the injustice. Do something. That clarity is psychologically rewarding, and your body participates in the transformation. When anger rises, you may notice your heart beating faster. Your muscles tighten. Your breathing changes. You become alert. You feel prepared to act. Compare that with helplessness. Helplessness can feel heavy, passive, almost physically collapsed. Anger pushes in the opposite direction. It mobilizes you. That is one reason people sometimes describe becoming angry as finally having enough. For weeks, someone tolerates disrespect at work. They remain quiet. They doubt themselves. They tell themselves not to cause trouble. Then one day, something changes. They become angry. And suddenly they say, no, I'm not accepting this anymore. In that moment, anger can be useful. It may reveal that a boundary has been crossed. It may provide energy to confront something you have been avoiding. It may help you recognize unfairness. The problem is not that anger always feels powerful. The problem is what happens when the brain learns, whenever I feel vulnerable, anger makes me feel better. Because then anger can become more than an emotion. It can become an escape route. And like most escape routes, the immediate relief can hide what happens afterward. There is another reason anger can become surprisingly attractive. Anger simplifies the world. Real situations are often complicated. Imagine your partner forgets something important to you. There are many possible explanations. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe they misunderstood how important it was. Maybe they genuinely forgot. Maybe you never communicated your expectations clearly. Or maybe they simply didn't care enough. Uncertainty forces you to hold several possibilities at once. Anger removes that complexity. They don't care about me. Suddenly, everything makes sense. There is a villain, there is a victim, there is a clear explanation. And although that explanation may be incomplete, certainty itself can feel satisfying. This is especially powerful during conflict. When you are angry, your mind begins collecting evidence. You remember the rude comment from last month, the promise they broke, the message they ignored, the time they disappointed you before. Each memory strengthens the story. See, I knew it. They always do this. And once that story becomes convincing enough, something else happens. You stop investigating. You start prosecuting. You are no longer trying to understand what happened. You are building a case. That can feel good because being right provides psychological stability. If they are clearly wrong, you don't have to examine your own uncertainty. You don't have to wonder whether you misunderstood something. You don't have to consider whether you contributed to the conflict. You don't even have to decide what you actually need. You only need to remain angry. And anger can create its own reward loop. Something happens. You replay it. The replay makes you angry. The anger makes you search for more evidence. The evidence makes you replay it again. Hours later, the event is over. But emotionally, you are still inside it. This is why imaginary arguments can become strangely compelling. You are taking a shower, driving somewhere, trying to sleep, and suddenly you are having the conversation again. Except this time, you know exactly what to say. They make their argument, you destroy it. They criticize you, you deliver the perfect response. They finally realize how wrong they were. You win. None of this is happening in reality. But your nervous system can still respond to the imagined conflict. And for a moment, the fantasy gives you something reality did not. Control. The original interaction may have left you speechless. Maybe you froze. Maybe you didn't understand what was happening until later. Maybe you walked away wishing you had defended yourself. The imaginary argument repairs that feeling. Now you are prepared. Now you are powerful. Now you have the perfect words. That is why telling someone to just stop thinking about it often doesn't work. The mind may be getting something from the replay, but there is a cost. Every time you rehearse the offense, you may reactivate some of the emotion associated with it. You are no longer responding only to what happened once. You are responding to what you have mentally recreated 20 times. And this can distort the size of the original event. A 5-minute disagreement can occupy 5 hours of mental space. A careless comment can become evidence about someone's entire character. One mistake becomes, you always do this. One disappointment becomes, you never care. Anger likes absolute language because absolute language preserves certainty. Always, never, everyone, no one, completely, obviously. These words remove ambiguity. But relationships, workplaces, families, and human motives are rarely that clean. Anger can also become socially rewarding. Imagine telling a friend what happened. They actually said that to you? Your friend becomes angry on your behalf. You feel validated. You tell another person. They agree too. Now the story feels even more certain. Again, validation is not inherently bad. Sometimes you need someone to confirm, yes, that behavior was unacceptable. But there is a difference between support that helps you process an experience and support that keeps you emotionally activated. One moves you toward clarity. The other keeps feeding the fire. This is where anger becomes deceptive. Because while you are angry, it can feel like you are doing something. You are thinking, analyzing, rehearsing, explaining, judging, maybe planning what you will say next. There is enormous mental activity. But activity is not always resolution. You can think about a conflict for 6 hours without getting one step closer to deciding what boundary you need. You can complain about someone every week without changing your relationship with them. You can repeatedly prove that someone was wrong without answering the more useful question, what am I going to do now? And sometimes that question is uncomfortable, because anger can preserve the fantasy that the other person must change before you can feel better. They need to apologize. They need to understand. They need to admit what they did. They need to regret it. Maybe they should. But what if they don't? Now you are faced with something anger temporarily protected you from: powerlessness. You cannot control whether another person understands you. You cannot force someone to apologize sincerely. You cannot rewrite what already happened. You cannot make everyone treat you fairly. And accepting those limits can feel much less satisfying than anger. Anger says, this should not have happened. Acceptance says, It happened. What can I control now? That does not mean approving of what happened. Acceptance is not permission. It is recognition of reality. And recognition allows you to move from emotional reaction toward deliberate action. Because anger may give you energy, but energy still needs direction. Otherwise, you can spend enormous amounts of it fighting a battle that exists mostly inside your own head. And that brings us to the most important distinction. Feeling anger is not the same thing as obeying anger. The goal is not to stop feeling angry. That would be unrealistic and probably undesirable. Anger contains information. It can tell you something feels unfair. A boundary may have been crossed. Something important to you is being threatened. You are being treated in a way you do not want to accept. The problem begins when you confuse the message with the instruction. Anger may tell you, this matters, but anger does not automatically know the best thing to do next. Imagine receiving a disrespectful message. Your first impulse might be immediate. Reply now. Write exactly what you think. Make sure they understand how angry you are. Your fingers are already moving. And in that moment, sending the message can feel incredibly satisfying. Why? Because action releases tension. For several minutes, your body has been preparing to do something. Now you finally do it. Send. Relief. But 10 minutes later, you reread what you wrote. And the situation looks different. Maybe you exaggerated. Maybe you said something you don't actually believe. Maybe you transformed one conflict into 5 new ones. The anger solved the immediate problem. I need to release this feeling. But it may have made the real problem worse. This distinction matters. There is the immediate emotional goal, and there is the longer-term goal. The immediate goal might be, make this discomfort disappear, win the argument, punish them, prove that I am right, make them feel what I felt. The longer-term goal might be, protect the relationship, set a boundary, solve the problem, leave the situation, understand what happened, protect your dignity. Those goals are not always compatible. What feels satisfying for 30 seconds can undermine what you actually want tomorrow. So when anger appears, one useful question is, what is this anger trying to protect? Not, how do I get rid of it? Not, why am I angry? But, what is underneath it? Maybe the answer is, I feel disrespected, I'm scared they'll leave, I feel embarrassed, I worked hard and nobody noticed, I feel ignored, I'm afraid I'm losing control. I expected them to care. That question changes your relationship with anger. Instead of becoming the anger, you investigate it. And once you identify what is underneath, you can ask a second question. What do I actually need? Maybe you need an apology. Maybe you need clarification. Maybe you need distance. Maybe you need to say no. Maybe you need to stop expecting something from someone who repeatedly shows you they cannot provide it. Maybe you need to admit that you are hurt. That last one can be surprisingly difficult. I'm angry often feels stronger than, that hurt me. But strength is not pretending. Vulnerability does not exist. Sometimes strength is being able to tolerate vulnerability without immediately converting it into aggression. There is also another useful skill. Delay the action without denying the emotion. You can be angry and wait 10 minutes. You can be furious and not send the message yet. You can feel insulted and decide to finish the conversation tomorrow. You can notice your body preparing for confrontation without automatically confronting. That small delay creates space between emotion and behavior, and inside that space, you regain choice. Maybe you still send the message, but now you rewrite it. Maybe you still confront the person, but instead of, you never respect me, you say, when you said that in front of everyone, I felt disrespected. Don't do that again. Notice the difference. The second statement may still contain anger, but the anger has been translated into information and a boundary. That is much more useful, because healthy anger does not require endless emotional intensity. Sometimes the most powerful response to anger is remarkably calm. This doesn't work for me. No, I'm leaving. We need to talk about what happened. I won't continue this conversation if you speak to me that way. No explosion required. And there is something else worth noticing. Sometimes we hold on to anger because letting it go feels like losing. If I stop being angry, maybe what they did becomes acceptable. If I stop thinking about it, maybe they win. If I forgive them, maybe I'm weak. But releasing anger does not rewrite history. You can stop carrying an experience without deciding that the experience was okay. You can understand someone without trusting them again. You can forgive someone and still maintain distance. You can accept an apology and keep the boundary. You can also receive no apology at all and eventually choose peace anyway. Because your anger does not punish another person nearly as reliably as it occupies you. They may be sleeping peacefully while you replay the argument for the 50th time. At some point, anger stops protecting the wound. It starts keeping the wound active. And perhaps that is the most useful way to understand why anger feels so good in the moment. Anger gives you something immediately: energy, certainty, direction, protection, a sense of power, sometimes even relief. Those benefits are real. That is why simply telling yourself not to be angry rarely works. Your mind is using anger for a reason. The better question is, can you get what you actually need without staying trapped inside the emotion? Can you protect yourself without obsessing? Can you set the boundary without trying to destroy the other person? Can you admit you were hurt without interpreting vulnerability as weakness? Can you accept what you cannot control without approving of what happened? That is emotional regulation. Not becoming emotionless. Not becoming passive. Not allowing people to mistreat you. It is learning that an emotion can be valid without every impulse it creates being useful. Anger can knock on the door. You can listen. You can ask what it wants you to notice. You can decide whether something needs to change. But you do not have to hand it the keys. Because anger may feel powerful in the moment. Real power is being able to choose what happens next.